I think the acapella part where is it cool? Or whatever, I guess what would you call that?
Yeah, the breakdown, where it's just
Like a
singing
pause.
the harmonies.
Yeah. That's cool. That's like the part. It's really simple too. It's not really complicated, but it has.
The whole song is kind of just the same 4 chords and the same rhythm and stuff. Most good.
Just gonna riff
I
on
mean,
it.
most stuff that like. I don't know. It's kind of a thing with music. A lot of times, the most simple chord progression. It's just like about the energy and the. I don't know, the melody, how the melody works on the...
Do you have any theories about music? Like I don't even really know what it is, but when you can you talk about the different progressions, like the spacing of chords.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you call
music
that.
Theory?
Yeah, music theory. Like
1, 4, 5 and
yeah, that sort of thing.
And all that stuff.
Yeah, there's like symbols for it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to just kind of
You would love it, dude. You should totally study music theory. You would have a heyday with it. Because I think just the relationship between notes, in different modes, different scales, a ninth chord, what makes it a ninth. I don't get too into that, but I love.
It kind of takes the magic out of it, maybe.
Well, I mean, I definitely have had lots of conversations about this. I'm not one of those people who's like, I don't want to know what I'm doing. I just don't. It's not the most interesting part to me.
Sure.
It's like.
But if you tell someone.
It's like color theory or something where it's like, I know what combinations of colors I like.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of fun with the patterns and the color harmonies and stuff, but I don't.
Part of it could be just communication.
I don't need to know exactly what.
If I tell you do this spacing or whatever in this key, obviously that would make sense to me to have to communicate with somebody else, but that's not even necessary, it seems like.
Oh, dude, it's great for communicating. That's okay, we're gonna do a 1, 4, 5 in G, and it's that's a 1, 4, 5, 4. 1, 4, 5.
Yeah,
4.
Yeah.
And you take that anywhere and be like, well, why don't we do that in G sharp? And
you're like, okay. Well, what is your thoughts on, the old? I forget what the combination is, but when I come around, that sort of G C D. I mean, that's the most famous chord progression, seems to me, that everybody loves, right?
Definitely.
All right. I think there's a name for it, or I've heard people talk about that.
1, 5, 4, minor 6, 4.
Or how about the idea? What about I saw somebody's kind of talking about this, and the way they said it was interesting, or the way they showed how the feeling of a minor song, and but then you can uplift the feeling of it by playing it in a 3/3 polka timing, or something, and that's gypsy. And I think it's kind of interesting. It takes it out of seeming melancholy to actually kind of sounding not so melancholy by the rhythm of it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think you kind of do a waltz.
Or a waltz, yeah. Have you noticed that? You turn on Mexican radio, most of their songs are polka sounding, they say it's obviously something that people respond to, right?
Well, you got to think about their music is so connected to dance.
Yeah, right.
So it's the way that it moves in your body. We're with all the folk music and indie stuff, I feel like it got really intellectual and inside people's heads, and it's more about the, I don't know.
It's weird to think about.
But the music really is I mean, it can do so many things, which is what I love about it. But
it's obviously magic.
I think, yeah, no, I totally agree. But I think the reason it survived in the first place, or like the function that it served, was in connection with dance and like
for sure
ritual and like having people together.
Yeah, that's an interesting subject. I guess have you heard that like Islam is like doesn't do music or something? Is that true?
I haven't heard that.
That's really sad if it's true. If I don't know. Like, I don't know. I remember when we were in school, like that guy came and talked and was like, drum beats are bad or something, right? Remember that?
Amazing. He was like, bass lines are connect you to the devil. It's like the darkest.
I don't even think I heard what he said, but like, there's like this.
It was the guy from Bill Haley in the comments.
Was it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I got saved and then I stopped listening to it.
He's like, it puts you in a trance, a sex trance.
I think there's something true about the power of that, but at the same time, it's kind of like saying
it's fucked up. It's such an awful message for kids, man.
Right, but like, it's not totally wrong in my opinion, in the sense that I don't know. There's a weird intersection between letting go and like holding on. You know what I mean? Like in the sense of I don't know, man.
Moderation. I think that it's powerful. I mean, which is what I hear you saying too.
Yeah, essentially.
Anything that's powerful can swing both ways.
So how should, and that's the whole thing like we were talking about last night with anything. It's like setting boundaries, but not being like rigid or something.
Well, I think setting intention. I think thinking about particularly like taking it seriously and being like, well, what do you want to do? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to get people?
Trying to control people?
Yeah, we're trying to control
We're trying to
people?
make things better.
Yeah, exactly.
Individual, like
yeah.
And that's a commitment, which even the best, even some of the best can't always be motivated to do, I suppose.
Well, I think
sometimes you got to go to the dentist.
You don't really have to. It's like if you're successful and if it's working, we no longer have to have like, it's not a requisite that you have intention or that you like state specifically what your intention is, because the default intention in modern society is to make money, and that's totally sanctioned across the board.
Yeah, but I just want to make money so I can help people.
Right. Cool.
Because I mean, money makes the world go round. So I mean, if only I was the richest man in the world, all the good I would be done if it was me. It's like you don't want to be cynical. You don't want to be like naive, but you don't want to be cynical about it. I think, which is difficult, right? Especially if that's why you have to eat your Wheaties too, because if you always feel like crap, it's not always easy to be motivated to do the best for somebody else, I think.
Totally. I think I know what you're saying. Yeah, you gotta, I think about that a lot. Well,
if you have health problems, you realize that you can't even.
Yeah, you can't help anybody.
Can't do anything.
Well, and the way, a not super popular opinion that I hold is that, I think it's really sensible. I think it's really actually practical, but we're like workaholics and everybody thinks the most virtuous thing is to like work yourself super, super hard. But
work hard,
work
smart, play hard. How about that?
My personal belief is like you owe it to yourself and everybody else to find a balance that is sustainable and that makes you feel good. And then you're going to be so much more helpful in the long run.
Capable, probably?
Capable. You're going to have more capacity to, help people. And I think that's ultimately that should be the goal.
I like to tell, I like to remind my Christian friends that just kind of like, I try to provoke people sometimes just to get them to think, hopefully, but a lot of times that backfires, I guess, but if you're overly provocative, but just remind people that, or I like to say things like, I think Christians, like, we get arguing, I'll say, I think you should just go and wash some gay feet. What do you think of that? Don't be afraid to respond however, but Like stop and wash some feet for once, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe just do that for a while and then we'll talk or whatever.
Yeah, I like that.
It's kind of like a slogan. When in doubt, just maybe wash gay feet. Whatever that means, you know? The point is, like what you're talking about with the
sort of the
being vulnerable.
Road, yeah. Yeah, do something that costs you something. I think ultimately there's no substitute for sacrifice, and it's the thing that looks different for everybody else, but you know when you're making the sacrifice.
Yeah, but I gotta fight. But see, all these heretics out here are telling me to, or you know, if I let them walk all over me, think of all the little people that will miss the truth. You know, that's the way people start thinking. I think, you know, sometimes, and I think that's really pathetic. Like, just do you really? What do you think of yourself?
I mean, I would
buddy?
just say like cross that bridge when you get there. But the thing that's happening right now is that you really don't want to take the time out of your day to and like sacrifice is like uncomfortable, and being vulnerable is uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, what do you think about wanting to win? I mean, everybody needs to feel like they have a little bit of confidence, don't they? Here's a question for you. What, and don't give me the pat answer. What is the difference between a healthy confidence and being a cocky jackass? Like, how do you know how can you know the difference?
I think,
or is there a difference, or whatever? How do you look at that? Because I've never felt like anybody's given me a good answer for this, and I don't think I have one per se. I don't think it's obviously anything, but.
I mean, it's just, which one is a defense mechanism? I think if it's a defense mechanism, it's not, you're just protecting yourself. It's not actual confidence. Like, I think the most cool, confident, like, that person is, will let you, like, you know, that they'll I don't know how to, like, I'm just imagining a scenario where someone's like, I'm gonna fucking come into your house, and they're like, okay, like,
yeah,
you need to be in my house right now? Like, okay.
Can you be confident?
Like, I'm gonna fucking.
Can you intentionally be confident? And what would that?
I think confidence comes from a baseline lack of fear, and I think how do you not have fear? It's like, well, I guess you just you have some level of okayness. You're at peace with your own death. Really, that's what it boils down to. It's like, if this is when it's gonna happen, I guess it's gonna happen right now. I don't.
Peace with death seems weird to me, but there is a sense where it's a weird concept. I often wonder.
I feel like that's the key.
I hear you shocked me because you said, like, I always tell people who don't care about dying, I say, well, I'll see you on your deathbed, and we'll see if you believe that, if you feel that way. Right. That's my usual response to somebody, because, like, I don't believe you that you don't care.
Well, I'm not, like, trying to go out and be like, I'm the guy who doesn't care about dying. But, like, I just know that, like, in comparison to a lot of people that I've talked to that have a lot of anxieties on the subject.
Frozen or just...
I just don't... It's not an active... Like, I have a lot of struggles, like, day-to-day, like, difficulties. But when it comes to death, I don't feel that struggle so much because it's so inevitable. It happens to 100% of everybody.
I could relate with that.
Everybody that you know or ever have known, including yourself. And that's, I don't know, man. I'm not.
No, that's
it's not morbid.
I've never had a fear of, like, I remember the first time it struck me as, like, a kid, but it wasn't something I didn't get over. But I know some people don't get over that. I get it. I get it
too, but it's so painful. Like, I'm way more on the Buddhist side of things, you know, where it's like,
if you can spread out your suffering,
Yeah.
your whole, they're not trying to, as far as I understand, not trying to take out, not trying to avoid suffering. It's and I think that a lot of the pain and anxiety comes from trying to avoid suffering and death, and I'm more trying to ride with it. And
I didn't tell you, because I kept distracting myself and thinking of other side trails, but what I was gonna say about the whole like theoretical, like because technology reduced death rates, like so we lived way longer, right? And that was like a slow progression. It would probably just get like, oh, all of a sudden we can live 200 years, and then that would just probably progress up to, I mean, I think they've said that you could, even like the biblical ages are like feasible based on what they understand about like telomeres and our genetics. Like that's not totally out of the question, like just how like entropy works and stuff, like, but, and then beyond that, you'd have to like go to like printing body parts or making new brains or whatever.
Printing body parts.
But like, or growing them, right? And then how you transfer that, I'm not sure, but is what like struck me is, think about this: if people lived way longer and we like reduced death, people would still die. Accidents would be inevitable, right? Now think about with like economies changing.
Like bubbles.
Think of the tragedy that deaths would become even worse. You know what I'm saying? Everybody lives to 10,000 or say like seemingly indefinitely, and we reduce accidents. So when they did occur, like how much of a awful, like, not, you know what I mean? There's like a sense where we all know we're gonna die, but then if you like reduce it to like, say where it's like death occurs like say 1.001, like 0.00001 as it does now, but then when it actually does inevitably happen, it would be like the most devastating travesty you could even imagine, because like you're not used to people dying. It's not like it's lost its natural. I mean, to me, that just struck me as like how that would actually make it worse almost. If like, you know what I mean? Because like you lose somebody after being with them so long, and it's such a rare thing, that would actually make it like probably so devastating you couldn't even deal with it. You know?
Pretty weird to think about. I mean, it is. I don't know. That seems like
crazy.
Yeah, because what it is to be human is to die. Like, it's called the human condition for a reason, because like the difficulty with being human is that you're alive and you know you're gonna die.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the human condition. So if you're alive and you think you might never die, like what even is that? I don't.
Well, it's what's weird is there are. Have you heard of those animals that like technically keep living? It's the same organisms, like there's in the ocean or whatever. I forget what they're called.
but I mean, I think that fits into my kind of recycling, like it fits into these cycles, like.
Well, like what if you were like growing another you on the side of you, like as they react, like so that when the main you dies, but it's still attached to you, so it's kind of like you're splitting into a twin, and then you kind of just slowly transfers as one dies, like go to the next. Like seems like that would be more. I don't know that.
And you'd have like seasons of your life where you're like, well, I'm like, I'm Jamie 7 now, but I remember Jamie 2.
Yeah,
like,
but it's the same me.
Yeah.
Like that seems like plausible.
Well.
Why not?
And what if, I mean.
Because if the purpose is to sow your seed and pass on the genes, why not just have like asexual reproduction and then just grow another you to like take over? I mean, that sounds like there's no reason that wouldn't be possible, like evolutionarily. What do you think? Or do you think something wrong with that? You see a principle wrong with that? Because there's kind of animals that do that. That's what I was kind of getting at. I mean, I don't want to like make you not accept death. I'm just saying, it seems like that is like, well, actually, like reproduction in itself, you could argue is kind of complicated. Like, wouldn't it have been easy to just split off? Of course, that would get boring. Reproduction, asexual reproduction. Anyway, I'm all over the place. I'm gonna 3D print you so that you'll just think you're you, though. Have you seen that movie 6th Day? Really? Oh man.
Sixth Day?
Yeah, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
I mean, I usually see all his films, but I haven't seen that one.
Well, like that, they get into that whole thing because it's like popular in the philosophy stuff, but like where they can print somebody essentially and then transfer their thoughts to the thing, and the guy you find out he doesn't know he's not, he thinks he's the original one, but he's really the copy.
Oh, sure.
And then he's faced with like letting the original go to his family and wife, and so he just like sails off into like, you know, like I forget, like I think he goes down, takes Huckleberry Finn or whatever, and then goes down the river, sort of thing.
Jumps into
they like, because he's like, yeah, you're a clone, you didn't know that? And he's like, what? And he's like, yeah, I'm number 7 of me. And they like flip open their eyelid, and there's like a little blue dot that tells you what, like, which generation you are.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's bullshit. And then he like pulls down his lip, and like, yep, you're not the original, sorry buddy. I think you could make a copy of someone, and then they would just think they were the same person, and they would technically be the same person, and then they would just diverge from there, go their own separate ways. But that seems like an awful thing. But it's weird.
I don't know.
Hive mind. If I made 5 of you, would you like be psychically connected in some weird way because you're so similar? Like, because you know, like there's weird stuff like that with twins, right?
Yeah.
You have like the same. Oh, I want to ask you this as a thought experiment. So some of these things are not like technically possible, but they're like feasible, let's say.
Okay.
So if I took an exact copy of when you were dividing as like, you know, so it was like literal Siamese twins, exactly the same DNA that's going to come from the same, you know, 2 splitting cells, right? So they're identical genetic copies of your twin. And you made 2 buildings and you raised them identically. And I mean by identically, I mean exactly the same nutrients, exactly the same timing of everything that occurs in your world, right? Like when the light turns on, when somebody comes in and says the exact same thing to you. So no difference in stimulus, no difference in nature, nurture, right? You get the point? Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking they're enclosed environments like the Truman Show sort of thing. Only every detail, I mean, to the shielding of cosmic rays. The only difference is you're obviously you're in 2 different space, you know, you're occupying space-time slightly, you know, adjacent to each other or something. Like, that's the only difference. You essentially occupy different space. Mm-hmm. But everything's happening at the same moment in time. So would there be any reason to think that you wouldn't get the exact same response from those 2 people, like identically?
They would say the same thing.
Yeah, and respond with the same expression. If everything was, the stimuli was the same, why? I don't
really see the point of the question, to be honest. But I think it actually is not feasible that you could do that this experiment could exist. And why, like, okay, if they're occupying, I mean, you don't think that like your coordinates on the Earth affect the microcosmic workings of your mind?
Well, I do. I think.
To some extent.
Well, let's say you could modify the gravity and shield the cosmic rays. So the only actual difference is literally that you're occupying a different coordinate in space-time. That's it. Everything else is exactly identical. I don't see why there's any reason they wouldn't do the exact same thing. But that seems problematic for different reasons.
I just think that like it's such a unreasonable
testable thing.
Yeah, because like I mean just think about like any little thing that could set off a series of different kind of thinking in your brain. I mean, your brain is so nuanced. There's no way that you
That's the point, though. That's what I'm saying. Like,
well, yeah, and I just don't believe that you could, like, okay, sure, I guess if that was possible, I guess you could make 2 humans that behaved the exact same way. But it's like, if you're in the exact same environment, what's the point of even like calling them 2 humans? They're the same.
We're right. Well,
unless they're not, and then it's like, well, if they're not, then your experiment failed. Like you didn't have them in the exact same conditions.
Well, you're right. What would be interesting though is if you could monitor that, and then you could see if they start to diverge. Because I mean, obviously, if people were the same, even if you didn't have everything under control, you're probably going to get really similar responses from them. Right. It's like you would with like they've done tons of experience with twins. The whole point, the reason I pose that it's a lot of experiments because it's interesting to see how people kind of react to it, because I believe in free will and I don't even know how to explain it, but yet I tend to think I can't come up with any reason to think what the stimulus or would be that would make them be different. I want them to be different, but I can't think of a reason to think they would be different, all things being the same. And I advocate for a libertarian free will, but I have to be honest, like as much I think like, well, you have to have a reason to say it would diverge other than magic or like their soul or something. Like
I think I have a problem with, this is a little off subject, but I have a problem with a big part of like Christian philosophy, especially Adventist. It seems this whole like idea that like, I don't know, like, and I feel it in a lot of these questions that like it's all a like the great controversy, like it's all like a battle of like, it's basically like this like grand consciousness experiment. I think it's, and that's why I like also like the idea of
do you think that seems the idea of there being a great controversy, that seems like immoral maybe in some way?
Not immoral. I just
if it were true.
I'm not interested in these distinctions. I think that the nuance is so miraculous and wonderful, and I'm much more interested in like the psychic or physical exploration of the universe that we're in.
Sure.
Than I am with I feel like, I don't know, there's some presupposition I feel like about the nature of God that's at the foundation of a lot of this stuff that I actually just don't, I don't think I'm on board with it.
Being able to explain it all or something. I mean,
yeah, but God being like,
I kind of want to know though if
like a person, like it doesn't track to me that I don't think of God as a person. I'm not sure if I can even say that I believe in God, because most people, when they say, do you believe in God, they're talking about like a person with thoughts that can change his mind or do
God proper. Yeah, like I was going to ask you about that too, because I was just thinking like, what is it like if God is this omniscient, like a classical theist God, right, with omni properties? What does it even mean to be like? Because if we're going to go there, which is the classic, not just Christian God, right, but it's just classical theism, like, which seems to make the most sense when you start postulating about God. And that's what's interesting about the subject, is like there are, to talk about there being the greatest possible being that's the creator of everything contingent, and then to say he's not omniscient, meaning he knows everything that can be known, their problems crop up. And so it's helpful to have those, like God's the greatest possible being, and that kind of forms the framework of talking about these sorts of philosophical questions. Otherwise it just is like kind of a crapshoot. And that's how it's classically gone. But how would God, like, obviously he wouldn't have like a computer. He doesn't have enough RAM. So like he can only think about so many things at the same time, and it takes X amount of time, right? Like that doesn't make sense to say that. Unless you're talking about Zeus or something, but not the classical theist God, right? And I'm not saying it's not possible, but when you're talking about like the greatest possible being, and like, you have to make presumptions like omni properties, right?
The only thing that makes sense if we're talking about God is that God is everything that vibrates in the whole universe. The energy that makes DNA and proteins and everything grows from this is God.
He sees everything. He knows everything.
Yeah, but he doesn't see anything, because I just think there's this tendency to like be like, yeah, like
he thinks and he sees and he knows and he
Right.
memorizes. I just think that's all like,
well,
that's our conception, and I think it's very small.
Well, no, I think theology. I mean, this is, I like, especially like, what's his name? When we say that, we don't mean he's literally seeing or that he literally has eyes, but that he's aware of everything. Like he would be aware of everything. Or
yeah, because he is everything, and it's not a he, and it's just, it's like it's life, right?
Oh yeah, God
like,
doesn't have a penis.
Yeah, and right, yeah,
or a vagina. It doesn't make that's stupid. But
I mean, God could essentially be a giant vagina.
Or, I think the idea that I think it's just kind of a historical.
Also, it's like, what is the size? Like, we're trying to put God in a
exactly
in a conceptual space. It's just
and
like,
is he limited by
how
space
is it
time?
not? How is it not? I just feel like if you believe in God, it has to be that God is the beginning.
That's Aquinas right there, the God who is.
Yeah, and
but that he makes God very impersonal though, and then you have just Jesus Christ as being the fullness of the Godhead bodily, or if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. What do you make of that? I'm with you on the whole like God transcendency of God.
I think I just totally I think it's getting caught in the weeds. I think
you don't think it's.
I think what God's constantly saying, even through the Bible, in different ways, and also I don't think shit starts and ends with the Bible.
You don't think
way bigger than that?
You don't think God should be for the how God the intention of God for how man should live is exemplified in the teachings of Christ. Seems like a good idea to me. You don't think so?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it doesn't start and end with the Bible.
Sure. Okay. Like that's why I still think Christianity is definitely true. That's I think at the base of it for me is like what Jesus seems to represent, and like
there's sticky. Plenty of good stuff in there. I think bigger picture.
I'm always interested to hear about what do you think a better idea people have than what Jesus said, and like to hear what people have to think about that. Like, it seems like you could argue that, the whole God being a man sort of thing. Some people will take that and say like, well, that's like just Jesus thing, right? In a hierarchy or whatever, or patriarchy.
I mean,
it's just a product of that sort of culturally. You
considered this is not on the patriarchy tip, not having anything to do with the sex of God or whatever, but have you considered that humans have had various eras of enlightenment through what they have interpreted from the natural world, and the Bible was part of that, and it's all and I would just say like it's also mixed in with people who didn't really understand it and we're using stuff for like manipulative purposes, for political power. It's all mixed together. You had this really great like
progressive idea and that stuck.
I was just gonna say like, people getting messages from, let's just call it God. I'm more comfortable calling it like everything or the universe, the way things are, the cycles,
creativity, where it comes from.
You're picking up these ideas, and people like, some people get it really clearly, and they know, like, I'm just thinking now, like, one iteration of that to me, one explanation would be like, that's Christ communing with everything, the universe, getting it really clearly, spreading that message, and the message of love, ultimate like sacrifice, like, don't worry about it, like, I got you, which is like a good
philosophy, or like what a wonderful way for anybody to be like. That's amazing. And it happened at this particular political moment.
Sure.
And it may have happened other times in history, and it may happen again, but the whole thing is maybe the universe, God, is essentially benevolent.
It's true because it works. Are you saying that kind of thing?
I'm saying I think it's true because we're picking. Yeah, it's because it's the way it is. Like we're picking up on
the actual truth,
the stuff that resonates and feels right, and it's like the harmonic vibration of everything that's already in place, and we're just like sensitive beings that we're picking up on it, and it gains. It can't help but popularity and
then there's totally. I mean,
it just can happen in like all these different forms, and I think if you think in long form, like I don't know if.
I think one guy said it's true. It's not true like, oh, because the propositions are historically accurate, but true because it's like an arrow that flies straight, something like that. Mm-hmm. Because it's just true like an arrow is true when it can be shot straight. In other words, like I mean, not necessarily that it will be, but that's in the sense like that's almost a greater sense of truth. Like who cares about propositions and affirming them or not? More like, does it work? And I mean by work, I mean really work. Like,
is this how you feel?
Can you live?
Is this how you feel it? Is this what you? Is this? Can you get in a synergistic vibration with this?
Yeah, totally.
With this.
Yeah, that's a really controversial idea though. Like especially among Christianity, because now you have to start saying like, well, maybe these other people don't need Jesus, and then they're still God's going to let them into heaven. That's a huge problem for a lot of Christians. So that seems kind of stupid. I know, right?
Is a fucking problematic idea in my opinion. Like, I don't.
Yeah, it's kind of antiquated.
I really think if you want to get to the.
That's the wrong focus.
Unwrap. You really have to unpack and deconstruct so many things that you just like take for granted at the beginning of your argument. So like, I think especially for people who have like pretty big philosophical divides, like you have to keep going down, back to a thing that you like. The terms of your discussion are like, I mean, this discussion changes a lot if we're taking it as a fact that there is heaven and that there's like a gatekeeper and that, you know, there's a certain, like some people are going to get in and some people aren't. Right. So like, I don't even feel like we're having the same conversation if that's like, if we're taking that as
I use that terminology. I don't really think of it that way. I think historic is what scares me is the idea that, like, not that I wouldn't want to know if it were true, but like there are certain fundamental things like if they're not true, it's just like it is just made up, and it's like if it's not a real thing, then, but like that's the pragmatic thing. But I also think ultimately a lot of that actually is what took, you know, Christian culture in bad directions, like being worried about someone going to hell rather than worried about like, are they suffering in the now? You know, like we're going to burn heretics because we got to save their souls. I think that's the perverse.
Presence of God, like in this moment? Do you see and feel God's love? However you want to like verbalize it, like we're talking about the same thing. I think if God is everything, God is love, rather than like this construct of like burning in hell. Like what the fuck are you even talking about? Like this is my, you know, like I'm trying not to like.
No, that's how I feel about it too.
It's just like,
actually
that is so not that just feels like a perversion of like, that's just like something that humans are.
it was a useful tool to,
I guess,
to
I mean,
scare people.
If you want to make that argument, yeah, oh, for sure, it's useful.
So I think it's so I truly honestly believe after studying and looking at it that the Bible isn't saying that. Like I know a lot of people would disagree with that, but that's one of my things I like to talk about because I think, and I feel the same way about like when you look at history, like we have like they burned heretics like in the early Christian era when in like the 500s and stuff, right? And I think that's an interesting conversation because how much does God really want to control what people think? It seems like it's a good idea to let people like come to their own conclusion about that, and then but is there any sense where you have to protect any kind of truth about it? Because after all, if somebody had protected the truth from
your truth for
saying
yourself,
people,
but I don't think you can do it for anybody else. And
yeah, but wouldn't it have been nice if somebody stopped the guy from perpetuating the idea that God wants to burn people in hell forever for his glory? Like it would have been nice if someone like stepped in and said, no, that's not how this works. Because a lot of damage was done.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's super important to look at those examples, especially if you're going to advocate on the behalf. If you feel like it's your job to like testify on behalf of your idea of God and what He wants, and you think that God has desires and wants certain things, definitely look at those examples of people who are acting in the same way and say like, okay, hold up, am I really listening to God? Like, is this like that? You gotta take that shit fucking seriously. Don't just say,
I know.
Like,
don't just say it. Just because
you
you say that doesn't mean you're actually living by it. And this is that's what happens to me. I'm like, oh, I want to like, I say it all the time. I want to influence people to not think of God in that sense, like with the hell thing, right? I really want to like be an influence to make people realize that's garbage.
Sure.
But then I think, who the hell do you think you are? Like to even, like, do you think you're going to, you can like be down on yourself, but you can also be realistic about it. It's like, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Right. Like, but then I want to be honest with myself. Like, what am I trying to do here?
Well, that's the vulnerability thing too.
Yeah.
It's like, that's confidence and trust, engendering of trust. Like,
I've kind of come to terms though with this,
and idea. I feel like that's actually where the truth comes in, is when you're not like so sure of, like that's when you can hear this, like, it's the Spirit talking, or like, commune with the Holy Spirit, like in those moments where you're open, you're like, I don't know, like I want to know, like I want to feel it,
but for sure, but like this is another one of those places where it's like, I don't want to be so wishy-washy that I don't stand for anything. Because like I've come to the realization where I even say it for my own sake, and just to be clear and not be, like I don't know, but I'm really secretly trying to like influence people. So I've just come to the realization I want to influence people and be an influence to other people who have similar beliefs to me. In other words, I want to go into your metaphorical house and steal. And I know you want your kids to believe in hell, but I want to like sneak into your kids' school and teach them that hell isn't real the way you're teaching them. Like, that's the way I say it sometimes, just to be over the top. But the point is, if I'm honest, I want to influence people to stop saying that. Like, I have to be honest. I think it's a good thing, and I don't want to be wishy-washy about that. But I get what you're saying. Like, I also don't want to be this rigid dick who thinks he knows everything either. I also don't want to think about it, overthink it either. But
if you take, like, I think
that's probably the thing about me you probably least like, but that sort of tendency,
I don't
right?
think of it that way. I'm not sitting over here being like, oh, I hate that Jamie's this way, just so you know.
No, it does matter to me, actually. It does matter.
No, it's not how.
Because I respect your opinion, so.
I just think I take it as a core tenet that transformation pretty much happens from the inside or whatever. It happens like on a personal, like, it's kind of the, like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Like, I think all we can do is like create a comfortable atmosphere, do your thing, like lead by example, and like make it okay for people to come to their truth on their own terms. I just don't think it, and you probably gathered this by now, but I just don't think that it comes from the outside, like forces. Like I think your mom and dad, your teachers, people who have engendered trust with you and have like a relationship, your friends, maybe artists or something can illuminate things for you, but I think it comes from it's just actual transformation doesn't ever. I don't.
Nothing real
like
anyway.
Influence.
I struggle with that. I don't like.
It's like a
the idea of
shallow
influence.
thing. Like it can. Obviously, there's influencers online that like, and there's a lot of like rhetoric floating around, and people like grab bits of like
propaganda.
Yeah, well, they grab bits of language and they cling to it, and they're like, oh, okay, I have my hot take. Like, I have a stance. This is my political view. But ultimately, that's
shallow.
It's shallow because it's a way around being present and thinking and taking things. Like, what do you feel right now?
That's my natural inclination, but like I've slowly like I don't disagree with you. That's what I was saying when I said to you, I don't, because like look, if someone's nice to you the first time you meet them, like I've noticed this with people, like my own, just kind of how I react. Like if the first time I meet someone who has different ideas than me that are like antithetical or whatever, if they like just the first time I interact with them, they're just really kind. Like all of a sudden, like I don't look at what I disagree with them about. Like it doesn't define them as much, at least. It like forces me to realize, and then that feels so shallow. The idea that, I want to be, even with everybody and like not be like triggered by the way they think. I want to treat them equally. In other words, that as human beings, right? And I've noticed that it's so much easier. So then if you think about that concept, like, oh, it's pragmatic to like if you want to influence the world, that you would like say something kind to someone when you first meet them, but that feels so fake, right? Like it has to be authentic. But then at the other hand, it's like that's just the way the world works, dude. Like you don't want to go around thinking about how you can butter it. That's what I meant when I said I don't want to be like schmooze people, because that just seems like you're totally selfish. But at the same time,
if you just
can you fake it till you make it regarding like loving people? Should you fake it until you make it?
I mean, I don't am kind of on board with the act as if mentality. Yeah. I'm actually pretty on board with that because I think
it can transform yourself, right? Towards that
you're
disposition.
You're sort of like it's a bit of a physical like, or it's a bit of a sacrifice that comes, from inside you, and that's transformative.
It's like what Oprah says: do something hard every day. It's probably a good idea because then you're more able to be free, like in the way you know what I mean, like treat people.
I mean, it puts you in touch with. I think it builds empathy, and I don't know, but yeah, I don't have a problem with the act as if thing. I think if it's manipulative, of course. Again, though, who are you fooling?
Yeah, right.
Like, are you trying to manipulate people, or are you trying to like? Are you using a tool to get yourself more open and to be able to relate to people? Like, that's okay, I think. In fact, I would say it's a good idea.
Well, this gets into the conspiratorial thing too, with thinking about like they out there, like people say. Like I know, like if you read rules for radicals or whatever, and some of the principles are like actually really intelligent. Like you need to influence, like you need to get into schools to influence children if you want to change like cultural, like large swaths of culture. Now that can be putting aside whether what you're trying to influence is good or bad, but we have to like acknowledge that like teaching kids, that's a huge foundation for like, you know what I mean? Like, is that just in principle wrong?
It is, and that's why institutions scare me.
I know, right?
Like, well, any institution is inherently, I don't fucking trust it, because if it was so trustworthy, why wouldn't this just be coming from like my family or my friends, or like, I just think institutional
influence is maybe wrong in and of itself.
I kind of think so.
But what about talking about everything you've just been talking about? Like if that could be exuded in large mass through the public school systems. Like, wouldn't that be a good idea?
Why are you so concerned with everything being scaled up and being?
I'm not.
No, but I feel like I get into this conversation a lot with people, like with the food scarcity and all this stuff. Like everything has to. They're like, get real, dude. Like everything has to happen. Do you know how many people on the earth? And
the roads,
like,
bro. The roads.
Yeah, like everything.
We'll build
everything's
the roads.
like infrastructure for because we have to do this. Like cities have to be this way. Education systems have to be this way.
I'm really just love everybody. That's why I'm saying this.
These institutions exist because out of necessity. Like it's this false idea that all this stuff is happening out of necessity.
Dude, and how conservative of you. Like homeschooling then is probably the best way to go. I'm just saying all things.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No, I wouldn't.
I'm not advocating for going into the schools and teaching any given particular thing. I don't want that to happen. But I'm saying like it is true that you get in early with people or make things available for them. It's going to make that change. But maybe this. I agree with you. I think that's just in itself is probably a wrong idea.
It's just so fraught, right? Because it's a one size fits all. Like again, it's a placeholder for having to do, or I would say like getting to do the real work of like being vulnerable with a person or a small. I just don't think we're like capable of like I can't.
Well, that's American principles. Like we don't want a king. The king is not the right way to go. People, because like you might like this king, but the next one, the religious freedom, like that's a good principle. Like not pressing people, they have to be this way. I think America's been pretty decent about that, at least to some degree. But of course, right? I mean, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. I think
I'm definitely glad though we have American democracy rather than the Pope. Seems like that's a better idea.
Sure. I just think the problem with America is that it's too big.
Yeah, for sure.